Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's April 4th, 2021. Happy Easter to anyone out there. This is probably getting posted a few days later. But recently I had a video I had a comment and a question on a video that I posted about persistent herbicides and Grazon that I think I created last year. And Grazon is an herbicide that persists even after composting in some cases, and I talk about that in that previous video. And its affect gardens and all, and people are becoming much more concerned about the health of their property as well. And so that's how I got this comment yesterday. This is from Army Mobility Officer. I have 80 acres and a small cattle operation. My dad used Grazon 7 to 10 years ago, nothing since then. I stopped putting poison on my cows to kill lice last year. We feed our cows hay grown by third parties. I feed my cows range pellets. I look at Greg and Judy videos and his Dirt is Alive. If he rolls over older cow pie, worms are everywhere. What is under mine? Nothing. No worms anywhere. Everyone's thoughts are appreciated. So I think that'd be really good if anyone has thoughts and suggestions about it. I'm certainly going to share my thoughts as well. And I think there's a very good resource out there for you in this situation. And that is Gabe Brown. Gabe Brown, geez, it's been a couple of years since I've looked at any of his videos. But I would say he's sort of a reborn again farmer ecologist is how I would look at things. Where he was brought up the traditional way using various chemicals, the Green Revolution, what everybody since the 70s has been doing. Well, actually, since the end of World War II, we had all of these products that were used for warfare, which ended up being turned into being used for bombs, used for fertilizers. Those things that were being used to poison people were used to poison plants and to poison insects. And I know that's an overly simplified and dramatic way of describing things. But at some point in his life, he decided to make some changes in his life. And there are many YouTube videos where he's been a guest lecturer at different universities and has taken people out to different farm sites that he's gotten people to respond by, I guess the common term is regenerative agriculture. And so this would really work for people who have cattle farms and all. I think he's a great resource. So again, it's Gabe Brown. My influencers, and I think Gabe Brown's information is absolutely excellent. My influencers were people that I talked about before, John Todd, and that's with bioremediation, and that's with where we live next. All right, how to say this? So when I was growing up, and you went for a swim in Lake Ontario, which was just a couple hundred yards from our home, you used to come out with rashes at different times because the companies along the shore of Lake Ontario just dumped their waste right into there. And that'd be paper mill products, human sewage, all sorts of things were done back then. And when Thea and I were here back in the early 80s, we became members of our environmental committee and tried to get started a recycling plan, which we ran into lots of hoopla with. Our property next door is now it's a gravel mine, but it was the town dump for many years. The farmland around here is most of the people who are still here doing farming, most are baby boomers still along in here. And so they're using the same techniques of using all the chemicals and all the fertilizers. And I've had farmers say to me, it's impossible, you can't do what we're doing here because this is strictly gravel, there's no good soil here and all. And so the farmers' stands around here they really don't grow any of the food that they sell. It comes in on trucks just like in the grocery store, but people are paying a pretty good price for it. So, you know, and I've made videos about the Environmental Work Group, which is ewg.org. I believe that's their website, and about, you know, water, cleaning up our water as well. So I think Gabe has a lot of good information about this would affect climate change. It's basically taking carbon out of the atmosphere and putting it into the soil, because the trillions upon trillions upon trillions of microorganisms in the soil are what make a good environment. And then the earthworms and the red wiggler worms, they'll all come back in that area. We really need, it all starts with, if we want to remediate, or we want to regenerate good soil on our property, the trick is getting carbon out of the atmosphere and getting it into the soil. And so for many people, it will be putting in cover crops right off the bat. I mean, there isn't a chemical reversal agent that we can deal with and all. I made videos in the past when I was hulling the black walnuts, and how that actually killed all of the earthworms right in that. And that's an organic and natural chemical that's within the flesh and the leaves and all of black walnuts. And I'm not trying to poo-poo black walnuts here, but I'm saying that the word organic and all natural shouldn't make you think that it's good for you. We always need to look at, well, how do these compounds interact with the critters that are living in our soil? Those microorganisms are essential. The same thing with our bodies. I've made videos about the microbiome within our digestive systems, and how they actually promote translocation of the phytonutrients, the antioxidants and all, going into our circulatory system so that they can actually get around in our body. And by eating the wrong things in our diet, they don't have the short chain fatty acids from breaking down fiber, unless you get a lot of fiber in your diet. So the carbons, getting the carbons out of the atmosphere, help to create an environment where the microorganisms can start doing their work. And those microorganisms create an environment where the earthworms will come back, and that the proper degradation of those products get brought down. When the cow dung is sitting there on the surface of the soil, the earthworms coming up into it are taking those nutrients and that organic material and bringing it down into the gravel. I'll try and make some videos of some of the places. I've done some in the past where I've done all the cardboard and all the wood chips and all of that material doesn't just break down and sit on the surface of the soil. It gets incorporated into our gravel, and it creates, even though there's stone in there, a deep, rich, beautiful humus and organic layers within the top layers of the soil. And over years, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and you get richer and more beautiful soil. So what sort of things do farmers who are in this situation? Well, they'll put in cover crops, and what they'll often do is talk with other farmers in the areas who's already had success, but it won't be like just putting in oats, which oats are absolutely fine. There's a great carbon source right there for them, but it's, you know, one of the things is there's a couple of paths you can go, like using a no-till path, and actually allowing these crops to have successive crops with multiple different grains, some that are nitrogen fixers, some that have big taproots that open up the soil and allow microorganisms better penetration, so to decompact the soil, to increase carbon in the soil, to increase nitrogen in the soil, so that your various different seeds that you're placing on the site really start to create an environment where those microorganisms within the soil are able to break everything down, and then the non-microscopic organisms, the earthworms and all, they just start appearing. They start appearing, and they start incorporating all that material instead of it drying out and just getting blown away in the wind. There's lots of soil that needs to be regenerated. There's lots of degraded and depleted soils. And we enhance the depletion part when we use the different chemicals. And the feeds that we feed our animals have to be important. So those third-party hay farmers, we need to not just educate ourselves, but we need to educate the people who bring the materials. And some people aren't interested. They've always done it this way. They've always had good fields and all, and they aren't necessarily going to give you crops that are persistent herbicide depleted, because these persistent herbicides, these companies are really smart about changing the names every couple of years. So it's hard to stay on top of it. And there's certain financial benefits besides selling them with a new name by tweaking them, because they get significant tax benefits as well for these large agricultural industries. So it's trying to clean our water, trying to regenerate our soil, and like I've said before, there's dirt, there's soil, and there's soilless mixtures. And the soilless mixtures will certainly have many different organic compounds or inorganic materials. There may be perlite, vermiculite, there might be coco coir, there may be peat moss, there might be sphagnum moss, there could be straw, that's a rich carbon source. That's the soilless mixture that I was just talking about initially, or the bark. And then we talk about dirt. Well, those are a bacterially dominated soil. You aren't going to find as many earthworms and all in those situations. When we get to a soil that's balanced with bacteria and fungi, the fungal consuming nematodes, the bacterial consuming nematodes, the protozoa, the micro arthropods and all. And I'll try to remember to link in this video a couple of videos that I've talked about soil, and those are the sand, silt, and clay. It's actually the structure of the soil. And then there's the video that I talk about soil succession, where we transition a bacterially dominated soil to a more fungally dominated soil for a food forest, where we have beautiful organic, a beautifully organic bioecosystem. It's an ecosystem within the soil itself. I have made videos in the past on the bioremediation systems that we put in. Since we live next to an old town dump, and we have lots of herbicides and pesticides being used all around us here, one of the things we did was we put in bioremediation systems, so that as the water comes down and all the plants and materials come on our site, and you'll see in the swales when I go through, like this time of year, you'll see many of the leaves are in the swales. And I've made videos in the past about PM2s and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs or PAHs, and these are compounds that are generated that harm our lungs, that harm other species' lungs as well as create inflammatory agents in our bodies that adhere to the leaves on trees because of the lipid layers on them. And then when those tree leaves fall to the ground, the fungal organisms help to break those down and turn them into just their basic elements and completely neutralize it. So that's a form of bioremediation, taking those airborne pollutants that are so microscopic that we breathe them into our respiratory system. So I'd say, looking at Gabe Brown, if that's as far as you want to have good looking soil on your property, I'm looking at the whole system. More of a holistic approach with a W. When I spell holistic, I spell it with a double, with a W, meaning that I'm taking into consideration the air, the water, the microorganisms, the macroorganisms, the birds, the frogs, the reptiles, all of those on the property, because all together, by doing a census of these different species on the property and looking at the soil, we can tell about the robustness, the resiliency of the soil that we're creating. When we moved here, it was terrible. The only grass and weeds just grew here, and it's true what farmers say. You needed to add fertilizer and all at that time, but we took a more staged approach and brought in lots of wood chips. We brought in manures and composted those as well. And we've gradually been able to get to the point where the microorganisms are capturing all the carbon from the atmosphere and putting that into the soil. So we don't have to do all of these amendments and composting. We have many videos on large pile composting, weed composting, because there's so much benefits to weed composting, because the weeds, as I talked about recently in a video, they do so much mining of the basic elements that they can help us as well. And the bioremediation systems help us to break down those things that are harmful, that are created by man, into their most basic elements. Now, will this eliminate lead, mercury, cadmium? No, it's not going to eliminate those, but with the right type of plants, it can bioaccumulate with those plants, and those plants could be removed. When we were on the environmental committee years ago, this is when I first became aware of all these Superfund sites. And the Superfund sites, if you Google that, you'll see there are many places where factories would be taking their harmful chemicals and they were putting them in big pits. They were stored in different places. They were dumped in lakes. They were dumped in the oceans. And once they were identified, usually by whistleblowers, people who felt guilty knowing this is really bad for the environment. And there's far more of this all over the place in the world. But we looked at all of those Superfund sites all around us, all over Syracuse, Onondaga County, Oneida County, some places in Oswego County as well. And then I had my own experiences of seeing what we had called the sewage abatement plan, where without scrubbers, they had these big incinerators as well. I was real happy when they put the big incinerator just across the river from us, because it's to our east. And they incinerate. I've been in there, and everybody brings all their waste and materials and old building materials, and there's caustic things that are in there, and they go through an incinerator, and there are scrubbers on it, but the winds come out of the west and it goes east, and most of those people don't even realize what they're breathing in. I had the experience because when we were young, there was, I think it was called the Pollution Abatement Program. They didn't have any scrubbers at that time, but they just incinerated all this waste. And that stuff would come down and it'd be like ash all over the place if the wind was in the right direction, but it would burn your lungs when you would breathe and all. And there's many people in different parts of the country that are getting these components. So it's the incomplete combustion byproducts that are dangerous. It's the sulfur products, the PAHs, the PM2s, that are things that are airborne, that affect our respiratory systems. And if it affects our respiratory system, it gets into our circulatory system, it gets excreted in our urine, and gets excreted in our feces, and gets deposited on the land if we're a farm animal. If it's in a place where we have water that's going through our property that's contaminated, that's why we put in the bioremediation canal systems and all, that's an issue. When the leaves fall off, you got lots of deciduous trees on your property. Some of these PAHs and PM2s are ending up on the ground, but fortunately the microorganisms break that down if we've got the right soil components. And then again, trying to be mindful, trying to bring onto our property as few pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides. We want to bring as few of those on the property. And we want to be mindful about these other polyfluoral hydrocarbon systems that are persistent. They're everlasting chemicals, like from Teflon and so much of the clothing, I can't think of the name of undergarment. I can't remember the terms that are used for some of the clothing that you can sweat and you stay pretty warm, good athletic wear. Well, there's so many of these chemicals that are in some of our clothing products, and how they're disposed of, or whether some of those components get exposed to our animals as well. So I know the question was really about looking for impact on where to go, what to do, Cover crops, if you're into cattle farming, I think can really make a big difference. Using different seed mixes at different times of the year based on your climate and all, those things can always make a huge impact on your soil. If there's people doing tree harvesting and all of that sort of thing around, and there's wood chippers, wood chips can be, if there's a place that has different organic waste products, check them out and see what sort of materials are there. Be aware of what you're bringing in with grains. See how those grains, how those fields were treated. Were they organically grown? Are those grains persistent herbicides in the grains that are being passed through the cattle and ending up on the ground? We're not going to have good results. So those are all things to think about. Think about from the field to your field. From the field that goes to the granary, the grain there, what was in the how did that farmer operate that operation? So that's the way I would think about doing it. If you've got enough property, growing your own crops on your own land to meet all of the hay needs and having enough grazing space for them and gradually turn over, possibly putting some grain crops in as well, those sorts of things. My neighbors are doing that. I think they're becoming more aware of some of the concerns that there are, but I know they still use a fair amount of pesticides as well, because it's the bottom dollar is the bottom line. So I hope this was somewhat helpful. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. I think it's always good to help each other out in the community, and we all have to start from someplace. We shouldn't condemn those people who are doing things that we perceive as being, oh my God, that's stupid to do this. Our job is to not insist that somebody changes their way or to necessarily recommend that they change their way. It's by doing the things the right way and get them curious about what you're doing to see if we can get them to modify their ways of doing it as well. That's how we can make a big impact on people. Thanks so much for watching, folks. If you found this video of value, please give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and feel free to leave comments and ask any questions below. So that's my 2 cents. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.